Well, good to see everybody here during this hour of our worship. If you're visiting with us, especially if it's your very first time being with us, then please ask any of us questions. Let us know what your spiritual needs are. Fill out a visitor's card so that we can get in touch with you afterward and find out how we can be of assistance to you. We would love to help you and get to know you better, so please reach out to us. Let us know. You are very welcome here, and I'm glad that you've decided to be in our presence today. I want to go ahead and pick up kind of where I left off during the 9 a.m. hour. We took a look at Ephesians chapter 6, and that's where I want to start right now. In Ephesians 6, verses 10 through 17, the Apostle Paul talks about the armor of God and what incredible value it has in fighting against the devil, in extinguishing his flaming darts. All the weapons that he has at his disposal are nullified by the weapons that we have at our disposal. Just take a look at a couple of the phrases that he uses here. And I won't reiterate everything I talked about in that lesson, obviously, but it's a good jumping off point to what I want to talk about right now. So in Ephesians 6 and verse 10, it says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God that you may be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil." Verse 12 talks about the kinds of spiritual forces that we're fighting against. And in verse 13 he says, "Therefore take up the full armor of God that you may be able to resist in the evil day." To be able to resist in the evil day. And finally, including verse 16, "In addition to all, taking up the shield of faith with which you will be able to extinguish all the flaming missiles of the evil one." In 2 Corinthians 2, verse 11, Paul uses similar language there when he exhorts his readers about the devil, saying, "So that no advantage would be taken of us by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his schemes." The title of our lesson today is Expert Level Devil. Satan knows what he's doing. He's been doing it for a long time, after all. He's very good at his job. And all you have to do is take a look not just at the world around you that at every turn seems to always be falling apart and burning and swirling the spiritual and moral toilet bowl, but to look at your own life as well and to recall from your own personal experience how time and time and time again we have all fallen for his tricks. We have all fallen for his schemes. The scriptures could not be any clearer, by the way, about the kind of being that Satan is and what he's up to. He is described in 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8 as an adversary, as an enemy. You notice that the devil, nowhere in scripture is the devil ever called just misunderstood or he's an anti-hero, right? And you notice that, like in our culture today, we love anti-heroes. We love the kind of hero who he's rough around the edges and he's got a real dark past to him. And we love heroes like that. Like Satan is not an anti-hero or he's misunderstood. No, he's our adversary. He's our enemy. And he's been an enemy from the beginning, and he is prowling about, and he is always hungry, and he is always looking for something and someone to devour. And it's always been that way, by the way. There was never a point where God looked at the devil and just thought like, if only we could just get him to work for us instead of against us. In fact, Jesus describes Satan in John chapter 8 and verse 44 as a liar from the beginning. And when he lies, he does it because it's just part of his nature. That is how bad the devil is. From the beginning, that's what he is. And that is what he will always be. And Matthew chapter 25 says that hell has been prepared for the devil and his angels. Revelation 20 similarly says the devil and all of his followers will be thrown into the lake of fire for eternity. Genesis 3, then, when you go almost all the way back to the beginning, Genesis 3 kind of presents the devil as essentially what he's going to be always. And there's not really anything in Genesis 3 that you see there, at least on a fundamental level, that has changed over time. It's not like, from Genesis 3 to the year 2021. Wait, is it 2022? Yes. From Genesis 3 until whatever year it is right now, there's never been a point where Satan Satan went and got his PhD. Like, he went and got his master's degree, or he went to a technical school and learned a new trade. He has always been this way, and from Genesis 3 onward, you basically get to see this is who Satan is. He shows up in the garden, he looks at something, twists it, manipulates it, lies about it, and causes the downfall of a person. And it's been that way ever since. Same model, basically the same tools, basically the same actions. And while it's true that the devil does disguise himself, 2 Corinthians 11 verse 14 talks about how the devil can disguise himself. His means of promotion are not really that secret. Like, this is just tried and true methods. Stuff that's been around for a long time. Greed, lust, covetousness, jealousy, anger. I mean, you name it, Satan's used it, and he's been using it from the beginning. I do like how in Galatians chapter 5 and verse 19, when he gives this list of the deeds of the flesh in Galatians chapter 5, it's interesting how in this list of things, immorality and impurity and sensuality and the like, I like how he begins the list in verse 19 by saying, now the deeds of the flesh are what? Evident. Other translations may say obvious. Like the deeds of the flesh are, there is no sleight of hand with the deeds of the flesh. Nobody is going to get to the judgment day. Nobody's going to get to the judgment day and go like, well, I had no idea. Well, look at some of these things and you go, immorality, like, okay, well, you don't have to be a Christian to know immorality, okay. Impurity, sensuality, outbursts of anger, yeah, factions, dividing, yeah. Envying, drunkenness, like you take a look at this list. There is nothing in here where you're going to get to the judgment day and just go like, well, I just had no idea. No, the deeds of the flesh are obvious, and this is what Satan uses. His tools and his methods are obvious. 1 John chapter 3 also makes a statement of similar impact when in 1 John chapter 3 the writer says there in verse 10, by this the children of God and the children of the devil are what? Obvious. The children of God and the children of the devil are obvious. Anyone who does not practice righteousness is not from God, nor does the one who does not love his brother. It's obvious. Satan's obvious. He is using tried and true methods that have been around from the very beginning. There is nothing new that he's doing. There is nothing new that we can look at and go, well, boy, that's just kind of like updated Satan right there. No. It's been around a long time. So what makes Satan such an expert? Because here's the thing. If his methods didn't work, he wouldn't keep trying them. It's kind of like think about some scam that you would never fall for, right? And there's stuff out there. Stuff is always floating around out there. Think about some scam that you just go like, who falls for this? I still get the emails, and they all filter into my junk email box, by the way, but I still get the emails about the, like, I'm so-and-so from Africa, and I run a bank, and I'm trying to get $10.5 million US, and you're the only one who can help me, and I'll give you 50% of it if you just give me your bank routing number and social security number. And I'm like, who still falls for that? Well, someone does. They wouldn't be doing it if someone didn't fall for it out there. But that's kind of how Satan works. Like, you mean you got tripped up with lust? Yeah. I guess that one still works. You mean you got tripped up with covetousness? You coveted your neighbor's wife? You coveted your neighbor's stuff? Yep. I guess that one still works too. You mean you got a real bad temper and you got in trouble for an outburst of anger? Yep. Guess that one's been around for a long time, at least since Genesis 4. So what makes, if we know what Satan is doing, like if all of his methods are thousands of years old and we know what's going on and we're not surprised by anything, and it's the phishing scam in the email, why is he so good at his job then? If a scammer came up to you and said, I am scamming you, and this is what I'm going to do, and you're going to fall for it, would you fall for it? Well, if the scammer was Satan, maybe so. What shocks me is not how innovative or revolutionary the devil is. No, what shocks me is how easily we fall for the same traps over and over and over again that you can read about in the Bible over and over and over again. The devil is an expert because he knows how to employ tried and true methods that lead to amazing and consistent results. As the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so, like people lining up for products that they know are going to kill them, or hapless and gullible victims of a scam that seems to keep working, no matter how many times it gets debunked, we accept the same lies about sin that the devil has been using from the beginning. The devil is an expert because he knows his stuff, like we pointed out in John 8, verse 44. He's a liar from the beginning, and he's a liar because that's who he is. It's part of his nature. It gets to his core. And when you know your stuff, you can really sell it. It sure helps if you're going to sell a product to use it yourself, right? It sure helps if you're going to sell a product to be able to look at your body and show it to others and say, see, this is what happens on this diet. See, this is what happens with this skincare product. See, this is what happens with that hair growth serum. With Satan, he says, I'm a liar. I've been a liar from the beginning. It's what I'm really good at. It's what I know. He's an expert because he knows his stuff. But I think there's another side to it also. He's also an expert because he's desperate. Maybe you might be able to come across as quite an expert if you were desperate. Maybe you don't care about that skincare product or that hair growth serum or that diet plan. But if you have a mortgage to pay and that mortgage is due, you think you're going to get on the phone and sell that skincare cream to give it everything you've got? Of course you are. There are several passages of Scripture. Matthew 25, verse 41. Hell has been prepared for the devil and his angels. And like I already referenced in Revelation chapter 20 as well, that Satan's lost. Like he's already lost the war. The mortal wound has been inflicted upon his head. And the only thing that he has going for him right now is flailing around and catching as many of us as he can. That's his mission. He is already going to hell. He's already going to hell. But if he can take me with him, it'd be quite a feather in his singed, hell-worn cap. Satan's desperate. And when you're dealing with someone who not only uses tried and true methods that always work, not only are you dealing with someone who really knows his stuff because he's an expert, but you're also dealing with someone who is desperate to make the pitch for you. That's why Satan's so good at his job. And the pitch that he makes always feels custom made. The devil has a way with finding everybody's weak spot, which I mentioned at 9 o'clock, that if you're not wearing the full armor of God, if you have some weakness, some part of your life that you have not protected with the tools that God has given you, Satan will find that weak spot. After all, what works for one person doesn't work for another person. What trips you up might not be what trips me up. I might not struggle with a whole host of these sins over here, but if Satan can just get me just with that one, then he's accomplished his mission. And he got exactly what he wanted. And I think another point to bring out is as your life changes, right, as you get older or some circumstance in your life changes, the weak spot might also change. Like what tripped you up at 20 is probably not the same thing that trips you up at 50. But the weakness that you have at 50 is maybe something you never anticipated when you were only 20. Satan appealed very carefully to Eve in Genesis chapter 3. He appealed to what her weak spot was. In his appeal when he was talking to her, I think Eve had a sense of missing out. That there was like this godlike knowledge. See, Eve, what I heard, and it's just me, what I heard is that if you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that you're going to have access to like godlike knowledge. But if that's just not what you're interested in, then that's fine. Doesn't bother me. He's very careful with Cain. Cain's jealousy. Remember what God told Cain when he warned him about sin? He said, Cain, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is what? Its desire is for you. He was very specific there, God, wasn't he? Sin is crouching at the door, and his desire is for you. It's custom made, specially tailored. It fits you just right. Jesus warned Peter that the devil had strategically targeted him. Satan has asked permission to sift you like wheat. Again, it's very specific. Now, it's not that sin itself is novel. Every sin is just kind of a retread of stuff that's been around for a long time. But the devil likes to make us think that our circumstance is special. Let me give you some phrases that I think will call to mind maybe some sins that you've had problems with in the past. The devil wants to make you think that you'll be able to handle that lie. No one else could, but you can handle that lie. I think you, of all people, can keep your story straight and live in a lie. Nobody else could, but you can live a lie. That addiction won't impact you. Other people can't handle it, but I think you're a little stronger than most people. You can probably handle that addiction. I think you can have it. You can take care of that. You can have it all. Other people have to compromise. You don't compromise. You get everything you want. Everything. Satan wants you to think that she won't find out. You know, many other she's have found out before, but not you. You're more clever than other dudes out there. She won't find out. It's really true love this time. I promise. This time. It wasn't true love the last time or the time before or the time before that. This time, though, she's the one I've been waiting for. He's the one who really makes me feel special. A little bit more won't hurt. Just a little bit more. You can handle a little bit more. Nobody else out there understands. Nobody knows how you feel. Nobody knows your needs. Satan wants you to believe that your situation is custom made, it's tailored, it's special, and you can handle what nobody else has been able to handle before. Now, here's where I want to shift this lesson a little bit. We've talked about all this on an individual level, but are these things also true on a congregational level? Because I think if Satan is trying to trip me up individually, and he's trying to trip you up and trying to trip you up, oh, imagine if he could just get a 300 for one deal. I mean, boy, if Satan could just go ahead and, I'm kind of tired of this nickel and diming my way into hell. Let me see if I can get some discount sin going on here. I think all of these concepts are just as true on a congregational level as they are on an individual level, because just like with individuals, Satan knows what works for you and you and you. He also knows what works with us. Look at some of the ways that the devil is portrayed, some of the phrases that are used here about our war that we're fighting against him. In Ephesians 4:27, do not give the devil an opportunity. Romans 13, verse 14, make no provision for the flesh with regard to its lusts. 1 Peter 5, verse 9, resist the devil. James 4, verse 7, resist the devil and he'll flee from you. Stand firm against his schemes, like we read in Ephesians chapter 6. So, why does it just keep working then? Stand firm, resist, say no, flee from sin. We're told to do it over and over and over again. So why does it keep working? And what keeps working? What kinds of things work in most churches? Like you think about most churches, what trips up a church? Let me give you some things that will trip up a church. If you want to go ahead and ruin a church just wholesale, no more nickel and diming, no more individuals, let's just go ahead and destroy a whole church. Here's what destroys churches: disunity and biting and devouring one another. Galatians chapter 5. Be careful about biting and devouring one another, lest you consume each other. That's what would destroy a church, is bickering and arguing and dividing, biting and devouring one another. You know what destroys a church? Mortgaging our influence to pay for our standing. Now, what I mean by that is, do you want to be a church that actually influences people with the gospel to change their lives, to say a message that's not always popular but needs to be said, to stand up for a truth that nobody else wants to stand up for, to be distinctive and to be a city set on a hill? Do you want that kind of church? Or do you want to be a church that's in a pretty building where everybody looks nice and everybody makes a certain amount of money and we don't cause any trouble and all of our neighbors love us because we just are quiet and keep to ourselves? When you mortgage your influence to pay for your standing, your church will be destroyed. How about superficial differences that take on an ugly life all of their own? Ageism, where it's about old people or young people or elders or our youths. Racism, which you better don't think for a moment that that doesn't exist, although that was a problem back in the 60s. Yeah, it was and still is. Us versus them language is always about us versus them. How about wealth or position within a congregation? How about perfect families versus everybody else? I remember one time driving past a church, the sign, right, it was such and such church. I don't remember, I won't say which one it was, even if I did remember it, but the tagline under it was such and such church, or whatever, Woodlawn Oaks Community Church, and it was a place for families. And I always thought, was that what the Great Commission was about? That if you're someone who's a divorcee or a widow, or you never could have children, or you never wanted to have children, or you're a young single person, or you're an older single person, and you saw that church and that sign, a place for families. How are you supposed to feel about that? These are superficial things. But these things divide churches, don't they? Lust, adultery, pornography, and worst of all, allowing silence on all of these subjects to feast on the awkwardness that surrounds them. You can't say porn from the pulpit, Ryan. That's filthy. You can't say that sex from the pulpit. It's inappropriate. How about gossip? Did I save the worst one for last? And with gossip, the juicier, the better. I love the way the book of Proverbs describes it. Gossip is like dainty morsels that go deep into the soul. Dainty morsels that go deep into the soul. Other kinds of manipulative speech would be included in that. Holy gossip. People talk about holy gossip. I heard Sister so-and-so was really struggling in her marriage. I feel bad for her and I wish I could help. Well, that sounds like gossip. No. I love Sister so-and-so. I would never gossip about her like that. I'm just expressing my concern for her to people who are unrelated to the situation and knew nothing before, and I'm offering no productive solutions to it. But aside from that, more than anything else, all of these tactics are a smokescreen. They take our focus off the mission of Christ, and we become the church trying not to lose members. We become the church trying to preserve peace and quiet. We become the church of budgets and business meetings that never budgets any time for the Lord's business. And we become spectators to the gospel, and we become each other's enemies while we ignore the enemy behind all of these painful situations. You have one adversary, and it is the devil. And everybody else is either a saint or a sinner who needs to become a saint. So how do we resist? Let's bring this lesson to a close with a couple of quick practical applications. How to resist. How to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. Well, first of all, know when to run. There's a time to put up a fight. But there's also a time to run away from the fight. To know what your limits are. To know when it's ridiculous to stand there and fight. I know what my temptations are, and I hope you do too. And there are certain things and people and situations and circumstances that I know that I can't resist. So you know what I do? I run from them. I don't put up a proud, arrogant front and say, I can handle it this time. No, you know what I do? I run. I do what 1 Timothy chapter 6 says, flee. Flee from youthful lusts. I run away from it. I know what my limits are. You can't just muscle your way through every sin and temptation. A second point is turn the devil's opportunities into your opportunities. If you recall in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, in a very memorable passage that most of us are very, very familiar with, the Apostle Paul talks about how he's had this thorn in the side. I do appreciate, by the way, how he attributes it to Satan. A thorn in the side from Satan. And what did Paul do with that weakness, that thorn in the side? He prayed about it 3 times. First of all, it's a good point to remember, pray about your problems. But when he prayed, God's response was, no. My grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. And so, something that he calls a thorn in the flesh from Satan, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, what Paul says is a thorn in the flesh from Satan. He flipped it upside down and said, okay, then this thorn in the flesh is going to become an opportunity to grow. And I will grow in grace, and I will grow in dependence on God. Take the devil's opportunities, just as Paul does in 2 Corinthians 12, flip them upside down and turn them into your opportunities. A third point, be open to hard criticism. God places people in our lives who can hold us accountable, just like in Galatians chapter 2. When some of the apostles, even Peter himself and Barnabas too, got caught up in this hypocritical behavior toward Gentile Christians, Paul called them out for it. He confronted them to their face, and he gave them a hard truth. Are you willing to listen to hard and uncomfortable criticism? Because our parents, our elders, older Christians around us, even our own innocent children have been placed in our lives by God to teach us things, to keep us accountable. Let's break down our walls and let's let harsh words sink in as they ought to. Like the book of Proverbs points out, Better to have the wounds from a friend than flattering speech that just doesn't do anything to help you. And finally, take a stand. And then take another. And then take another. And allow the multiplication of faithfulness to do its job in your life. Remember what Jesus did when he was tempted in Matthew chapter 4. Satan came and tempted it 3 times. And he tried different approaches, different tactics. How about turn that stone into a loaf of bread? Surely you can do that. Well, how about jump off the edge of the temple and the angels will pick you up because they promised they would? How about if I just offer you the whole world? I mean, let's just go ahead. Let's play all our cards. What if I gave you the whole world? And what was Jesus' response to the temptation? In the end, be gone, Satan. Be gone. And like James 4 points out so perfectly, it encapsulates the mission that's before us. When you resist the devil, maybe not at first, maybe it takes a few times, maybe it takes a long time, he will flee from you. Do we take that seriously? Do we really believe that if I can take a stand right now, then maybe by taking a stand against sin today, I can take a stand tomorrow too? And then that will give me the courage and confidence to take a stand the next day. And maybe if I string together a few days here, 3 days, 4 days, a week, a month, a year, if I string together enough days, you know what eventually Satan's going to say? I got easier targets than you. Whatever. And he'll run away and he'll find someone else to pester. Resist the devil. Take a stand today. Take a stand tomorrow. One victory leads to another, which helps establish consistency. Now we're going to bring our lesson to a close here, and I want to offer an invitation. If you're not a Christian here this morning, I know you're in the fight. I've been in that fight. And every other Christian here has been in that fight too. Some of us, we fought some hard battles too, really hard battles. There are people in this church who stand in God's grace today who had to fight against some really difficult things. Addictions, broken homes, broken relationships, regrets, shame, guilt. But we stand in God's grace, and you can too. I know that you've got the fight in you, not just from yourself, like you've got to be tough and muscle your way through it, but because there is something offered to you in Jesus Christ, a strength that you have no idea what it is until you become a Christian. Like Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, where power is perfected in weakness, Paul says, all right, then I'm well content with weakness. Because if God says his grace is sufficient for me, then I need to believe his grace is sufficient for me. So if you're not a Christian, you need to become one. Put a life of sin behind you and take hold of the hand of Jesus Christ as the Lord and the Savior, the creator of the universe, and who will be the final judge. Be on his side, not the devil's. So whatever needs you might have, please let it be known by coming forward as we stand and sing.